Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and today and for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be coming to you from one of my remote locations. Usually when you hear me, I'm talking to you from Madeira Beach, Florida, where I've lived for about 4.5 years after living in Las Vegas for over 13 years. For the next 2 weeks, I'll be coming to you from Largo, Florida, where my brother and his wife live. I'm watching their house and their dog for 2 weeks while they go to Ireland. I hope they have a great time. I'm not much of a traveler myself. I suppose I could have gone, but I hate flying, and the longer the flight, the more I'm going to hate it. And as I think I've told you a few times on this show, really, the rest of the world, as far as seeing it, I guess I'm weird like that, does not interest me that much. Seeing China, I suppose, maybe Hong Kong or someplace like that, but China, Ireland, Europe, Africa, Australia, you know what? It just does not intrigue me at all. I think that for me, I still have a lot to see in the United States, let alone thinking about going to the rest of the world that hates us, frankly, and spending my money there. I suppose I could be convinced if it was a private plane and certain other things, maybe like a around-the-world cruise where I could do some writing and some other things, pulling into some of these ports and seeing them and then jumping back on the ship and going to some other place. I'm sure I might be able to be coaxed into something like that. But otherwise, I think I'm just going to stay here in the United States. So I wish them all, I hope they have the best trip that they can going there. But for the next 2 weeks, my sister and her husband are going to be there. My brother and his wife, and then a couple other relatives are like this. I guess there's 7 of them that are going there. And you should know the reason they're going to Ireland is because that's where my biological family comes from. How I got a German last name, long story. Don't have time to go in it. This show. I've also done this show from a couple other locations. I've done this show from my parents' place in Renfrew, Pennsylvania, which is near Butler, which is about 40 minutes north of Pittsburgh. And sometimes some of these disc golf tournaments that I've gone to, I take all the equipment with me, and I broadcast from motel rooms in Florida. So I'm a one-man operation here. I can do it all. Just take the equipment with me, and it all sounds great, and I appreciate all of you listening, but I will be here for 2 weeks, living in a real house, which is really strange to me because I haven't lived in a house since I lived in Las Vegas. So let's get right to the show. Man, there are so many directions. After yesterday's show, I covered so much ground, I guess philosophically, didn't do technically any news stories. It was just one big news story. And that was, of course, Donald Trump being the lone nominee. I guess I should mention, maybe we can start this way. Did you see that John Kasich dropped out? Kind of convenient, isn't it? Kind of reinforces what many of us Cruz supporters thought for a long time. I mean, him dropping out now, or yesterday, I guess, is no different than he would have dropped out 2 weeks ago or a month ago or 2 months ago. In all of those occasions, he would have had no shot to get the nomination. And so him dropping out now, it would have made as much sense for him dropping out 2 months ago, but he stuck around. Can you now see why a lot of Cruz supporters were very suspicious of him? Not just of his politics, him not being conservative, not just of his character, by some people's estimation that he's really not that good of a guy, but also politically, in that he had some sort of backroom agreement with Donald Trump to stay in until Ted Cruz dropped out. I guess what furthers this idea that there's something going on is that Cruz and Kasich allegedly worked this deal out. Well, how did that go? No sooner had we heard about that than John Kasich's telling his people, oh, yeah, you should vote for me in Indiana. And then just the day after Cruz drops out, Kasich drops out. Now, if he was really in it to get votes and to get delegates, wouldn't John Kasich stick around now that Cruz is gone? If he was really in it for himself, wouldn't he stick around? But he drops out. You people of Ohio, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Maybe he's working a deal to be Trump's vice presidential nominee or something like that. But if he continues to be governor of Ohio and can he run for re-election? I don't know. Is he term limited? I don't know. But if he comes up for re-election, I'd recommend you voting for somebody else. Just me down in Florida. I don't have a vote. You could take it or leave it. But I would not vote for him again. Maybe something else that I should mention that's very personal. That is personal, not also personal, but very personal. Maybe I should have started here. Is I am changing my voter registration from Republican to unaffiliated. I kind of knew that I was going to do this for a while when I kept thinking about Donald Trump being the nominee for the Republican Party. You know me. I've told you not just about my politics. You've learned a lot. Of course, that's what this show is about. But I think that you've learned a lot about my character in listening to me on Red State Talk Radio for almost 2 years. It's going to be 2 years in June. And I've told you, I do not like hanging out with people of less than great character. I don't like it. I know sometimes you can't avoid it. I'll give you an example of maybe some of these disc golf tournaments that I go to and run into people I don't particularly care for. I'm in, they stick us in groups for, going each hole to hole. There may be some times when I'm stuck with some guys that I don't like. But if I have my choice, I avoid those people. I avoid them at all costs. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've avoid groups in my life. I don't really affiliate myself with any particular group. I'm about as individualistic as you are going to find as a person. I think that's one of the reasons probably to even go deeper that I'm still single at 45. There is this, the kind of character that I have is I worry about being put in a situation where it's between defending what's right and defending the girlfriend or wife in my life who I know is acting wrongly. That is like the nightmare scenario in my life. Do you want to understand Ed Dentzel? You've never met me. Maybe you never will meet me. That is the nightmare scenario. Where on one hand, I have this oath to this woman that I've made. All right? And then she goes off and does something crazy that's not right. And then I have to pick. I know if I give her a hard time about it, I'm going to be sleeping on the couch for a long time or worse. Or if I go along with it, then I've compromised my morals, my character. Those kinds of things, when they pop in my head, they drive me nuts. And this is the exact reason that I'm going to unaffiliate. Of course, I'm going to still be registered to vote. But for the time being, if this is the way that a lot of people in the Republican Party, of which I have been a group, wants to go, then I have to exit myself from the group. All right? I just have to get out. I'm not going to stand there from now. I'm not going to be asked on the street somewhere. People know that I'm Republican. So, you got Donald Trump as the leader in your party, huh? What's that say about... I don't have anything to do with it. And I see that I've been reading quite a few stories. If you don't know, saw this article that happened, I think that it came out Tuesday night. As soon as Donald Trump won Indiana, and then after that, Ted Cruz decided to bow out of the Republican race. You know what became the number one search on Google? Libertarian Party. So I guess I'm not alone. I'm not going to go with libertarians because you know what? I don't know how much I really have in common with them either. I'm not going to any party. I'm going to unaffiliated, which is, truthfully, has been a choice that more and more people have been making over the past probably 8 years, 10 years, probably before Barack Obama was in office, probably during George W. Bush's second term, I'm going to guess is when that started. Well, finally, I'm going to join it as well. And I see that this guy, Fred Cole, who has gotten some attention writing some things, I personally am not impressed by him, but I know that he's finally made the same decision too. You can see that at ricochet.com. I don't know if that's the guy's real name or not. I have no idea. But he's changing it, and you can see in comment section at redstate.com, the other Red State, people saying, I don't know these people, they say that they're changing their registration. And we'll see if, what'll be interesting to me will be that, to see if Republican registration goes up or down, if the number of people who identify as being part of the Republican Party goes up or down. Because the way I would understand it, would be that these people who are going unaffiliated, these are people who are not going to vote for Donald Trump. There's no other reason to get out of the party. It doesn't seem right to me that you'd get out of the party then still vote for Donald Trump. Okay, that just seems contradictory, like a paradox. So these people who are leaving aren't going to vote for him. The question I have is those people who did vote for him in the primary process and weren't registered Republican, in those open states, open primary states in contrast to closed primary states, those people in those open primary states who were unaffiliated or even Democrats, are they going to now switch parties? Now that they got their guy, the choice they could have had of anybody on either side. Remember, if you're an unaffiliated in these open primaries, you can vote for either party. However, once you vote for one, you can't vote for the other if you're following campaign laws, and the people who are running these primaries are following campaign laws. So when you go in to vote, you have to pick one or the other. You don't get to, in some of these states where the primary in Florida is 1 week, and then the primary for the Republicans is 1 week, and then primary for the Democrats is some weeks down the road. Once you vote in the Republican one, you can't vote in the Democrat one. If the Democrat one is first, if you vote in that, you can't vote in the Republican one. That's how it works. So now, all these people who allegedly crossed over and voted for Donald Trump and now that they've gotten their wish, they've gotten their, I guess you could say, dream, are they going to sign up for the Republican Party? See, what I would say is if they don't, then they're really not planning to vote for Donald Trump in the general election come November. That would be a guess of mine. Because you would think once you get your guy in there and he's running the party, because no matter who the RNC chairman is, Reince Priebus, it's the president who is seen as the leader of the party. Yes, Debbie Wasserman Schultz exists, and she leads the Democrat Party, but everybody sees Barack Obama as the leader of the Democrat Party. And what's funny about that is at times it doesn't seem like Barack Obama and Debbie Wasserman Schultz have gotten along too well. And I think it's safe to say that Donald Trump and Reince Priebus are probably not going to get along too great either. But I would say, you know what? They'll probably get along better because of who I think Donald Trump is, better than Barack Obama and Debbie Wasserman Schultz will get along, have gotten along. But we'll see that. But you would have to think that these people who voted for him and were not registered Republican, they're so excited that he now leads a party. You would think all those people, hey, I want to be part of them now too. Well, we'll see. We'll see if the leaving of the party, like people like me, can be made up for those people who weren't registered Republican before. I happen to doubt whether that's going to happen. And that's the exact reason why I think that come November, should it just play out normally, nothing's been normal so far, that you just have a major Republican candidate and a major Democrat candidate, that Trump is going to get his butt kicked. I still maintain that. Now, what's funny about this is that I didn't hear, but I see that Rush Limbaugh has come out and he goes, I just have a feeling that Donald Trump is going to kick Hillary Clinton's butt in November. You should know he said that about John McCain in 2008. He said that about Mitt Romney in 2012. He said he just doesn't believe, in 2012 specifically, he said that he just didn't believe those polls. Which is one more reason why I continue to wonder why we listen to those people anymore. So he now has a feeling about all of this, as if the last 6 months never happened. That Donald Trump just kind of arrived on the scene and we don't know who he is. That a bunch of people, remember, you have to do this kind of figuring this out in your head a little bit. Barack Obama in 2008, and I know numbers on the radio stink. I know it's horrible, but still. Got about 69 million votes in 2008. He got about 64 to 65 million in 2012. John McCain got about 58 million in 2008. Mitt Romney got over 60 million in 2012. And the high water mark for Republicans getting popular vote was George W. Bush 2004. 64 million, 63 million, 64 million, somewhere in there. As I've told you, there's nothing we can do about Hillary Clinton. She's going to get 50 million votes, popular vote, no matter what happens. Despite her not being liked and being despised and people not trusting her and everything else, she's going to get at least 50 million votes. There's just write them down right now. Whereas with Donald Trump or any particular Republican, that number is lower. Not a lot lower, but somewhat lower. It's not an automatic 50 million, and it's more like 45 million or 47 million. We're already working from behind, and you should know on top of everything else that there are more registered Democrats in the country than there are Republicans. And once again, that's a number that's not even close. Which goes back, a lot of that being the reason that Democrats for, of course, a long time, specifically at the congressional level, dominated that part of the government. So you start adding this all up, and it's not hard to figure out that there's not going to be any butt kicking going on anywhere. At best, it's going to be close. At best, it's going to be close. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that it's going to be a blowout, meaning Donald Trump is going to get 60-some million of the popular vote, that's just not believable to me. It just does not even compute, because that's what it'd have to be to beat Hillary Clinton in a landslide. That's what it would have to be. It would have to be up in those Barack Obama numbers from 2008, 2012. It would have to be higher than what George W. Bush got in 2004. Because remember, George W. Bush did not, even though he got the most popular votes to that point in American history, he beat John Kerry electorally by very, very little. Very little. So when you say really kick her butt, somebody says that, it's just not believable. That's hype. That's feelings. That's a lot of things, a lot of stuff that we can't go by. And once again, if you really want to, I know these numbers on a radio, it's hard to understand. I would urge that you look that up for yourself. It's easy to do. And when you start just getting pen and paper out, you're going to see there's going to be no butt kicking going on. And then on top of the fact that there are going to be several, how do you put it this way? There's going to be at least 1 million to 2 million on the Republican side, people like myself who aren't going to vote for Donald Trump at any cost. So he's going to be working he's working negative 2 million behind already. Meanwhile, I know that there's a movement on the Democrat side as Bernie Sanders supporters who say they'll never vote for Hillary Clinton. Truthfully, they don't seem as believable to me as the people on the Republican side like myself who say they won't vote for Donald Trump. There is a precedent for this back in 2008. Hillary Clinton, despite her getting beat or not, she was still very popular in 2008. She got beat by an underdog, I guess you could say. But she still got quite a few delegates, and it was still quite close. You know what all those people did? They went and voted for Barack Obama in 2008. Bernie Sanders people will do that in 2016 as well. That's going to happen. So you start adding that all up, and I ask you how you come to the conclusion that Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide. Right? I mean, he has gotten the least amount of votes of a Republican nominee in a long time. You'd have to go back to a point probably when the United States had a lot less people to find a spot where Donald Trump got more votes in the nomination process than a candidate, 40 years ago or something like that? Just because there were just less people. There just weren't that many people to vote in the nomination process. So I'm going back to being, I've never been unaffiliated. From the time that I registered to vote in 1988, when I turned 18, I've been registered as a Republican. When I moved to Nevada, I registered as a Republican. And I specifically remember it was kind of funny when I moved here to Florida. I had to get my car registered, and you can register to vote at the same time. And I remember telling the woman working there, Republican, I remember her telling me at the time, well, that's been a very popular choice. And it was then that I thought, well, you know what? Hey, that was October 2011. I was starting to think, well, you know what? If Republican registration is going up in Florida, maybe next year that Florida would go Republican and Barack Obama wouldn't win the state. Well, we know what happened there. So I specifically remember that. Well, I'll be turning in the paperwork to switch. and I will remain that way for the foreseeable future. And I just want you to know this. If I change back to joining the Republican Party again, I'll let you know, and I'll let you know why. You deserve that, to know that. You deserve to know why I'm getting out, and then you'll deserve to know why I'm getting back in if I ever do. Truthfully though, man, my speaking's a little tough today. I might just stay unaffiliated. I'll be able to miss not voting in the nomination process on either side the rest of my life. I don't know how much that's really going to bother me. We'll see. A year from now, I may think in a different way. So I'm changing my registration. Let's move on to something else. This kind of is along the same lines. People starting to talk about third parties. I think it's gotten started because of what the Senator Ben Sasse from Nebraska, and I talked about him maybe a month ago, watched an interview with him with Peter Robinson. He had a long dissertation, I guess you'd call it, on his Facebook page. And some people are thinking that he's thinking about maybe running for third party on the Republican ticket. And a couple people on a couple different websites out there have given 1948 on the Democrat side as an example of how that might happen, even though Harry Truman in 1948 still did end up winning. I'm not saying that Ted Cruz or Ben Sasse or anybody else shouldn't run, but I mean, it's their life. But under the Republican Party name, like trying to get a third party, but it's also under the Republican Party banner. You know what I think has to happen here? You know, I've talked about this before, and it's one of the reasons that the United States is in the predicament that it's in, is because I don't like rewarding bad behavior. I look at what goes on in the United States in politics very much like parents and their children, meaning if your child does something bad, the kid shouldn't be rewarded for it or shouldn't get away with it. You send a bad message to children when they get away with things, and as a parent, you know it, but you go along with it anyway. For whatever reason, you're afraid of your kids or whatever the case may be. That is a bad precedent to set. Because kids don't learn what they learn. The kids are going to learn nothing but bad things from that. And it's the same way regarding Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and all of those people who chose to vote for him in the Republican nomination process. They need to own this. Somebody shouldn't bail them out. They should, if they want it, like I told you yesterday with what Kevin Williamson said. Just remember, people, you picked this. You had free will. You could have picked anybody out there. You wanted this. And when people want something like this, they deserve to get it. And the Republican Party playing nicey nice with Donald Trump, Reince Priebus, the rest of them, some of these prominent Republican politicians, conservative media members, all of them, they wanted this. They're going to have to pay for it. We're not going to bail them out. And if they win it on their own, then that's the way it goes. And you know what? I won't like it, but I'll live with it. But try to gain, salvage some sort of respectability for the Republican Party by fielding a third candidate, a conservative candidate, whether it's Ted Cruz or somebody else, and seems to me like trying to save face for the Republican Party. I don't know if I'm into that now. But I got to go to the break. We'll continue to talk about this after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about this third-party subject that many conservatives are now mentioning, probably hoping upon, wishing upon, praying for. I've told you that I have to draw the line if they're talking about, stealing part of the delegates at the Republican Party and having their own Republican candidate. I don't want to try to save the name of the Republican Party. I don't think that that's what we as conservatives are meant to do. All right. The Republican Party is made up of various factions, and I have nothing against that. That's part of the problem, maybe the way I differ from other conservatives. It's one of the other reasons that I don't get as crazy about the establishment and all of that as much as other conservatives do either. When you're going to get millions and millions and millions and millions of people together, you're going to have millions and millions and millions and millions of different opinions. And sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. All the Republican Party is a framework. That's all it is. Of possibly getting your candidate into office. I know we as conservatives, it's like we're a little spoiled sometimes. We just think for de facto that we should win. But I think that it comes back to what I've said yesterday. You know what? We're the ones that keep electing the same people. Maybe that's going to change this year. We'll see. The truth is, and here's the unpleasant part, is there are many conservatives who are going to vote for Donald Trump come November. There's nothing you can do about that. I could talk 24/7, get hopped up on heroin and meth, never sleep, do this show live from now until November, and many conservatives would still vote for Donald Trump. And then they'll complain about why the country isn't conservative enough. I don't know what to tell you. I just don't. I wish I could explain it. I can't. Now, there's also talk, maybe would Ted Cruz think about going third party in, like, getting together with Gary Johnson, the Libertarian Party candidate? Maybe, but I'm going to guess that Ted Cruz would feel very much the same way that I do. Look at the Libertarian Party, and I only agree with it maybe 50% of the time. I agree with the Libertarian Party's positions less than I agree with the Republican Party's established positions. So what's that mean? So that doesn't seem like a good fit either. And in fact, I'm going to say that there would be a lot of libertarians, true libertarians, who wouldn't like Ted Cruz getting involved either, no matter how many votes he would bring to the Libertarian Party in November and the higher profile that a Ted Cruz would give it. I wouldn't see that happening. I don't think that libertarians would be too happy about that, having to get attention for the wrong reasons. And I don't think Ted Cruz is going to join a party that is somewhat isolationist, pro-abortion pretty much, and some other issues. I don't think Ted Cruz is going to do that. There is another choice. There's the Constitution Party. I have to admit, I don't know as much about the Constitution Party. Would Ted Cruz and maybe somebody like Ben Sasse get together? Maybe. I guess that sounds workable. Maybe I could go along with that. They wouldn't be carrying the banner for the Republican Party. So I would see, hey, maybe this is a possibility. Maybe. I don't know how successful they'll be, but it would be interesting. And once again, this is why I say that 2016 is great business for political scientists. And truthfully, it's great business for anybody who's doing a show like this, Red State Talk Radio, or anywhere else. But my main point here would be that if anybody's thinking about third party and then trying to run it under the Republican banner like a second Republican Party choice, we've done that. Here's something that I don't think that and I want to lead from this next topic into what Ben Sasse said in his Facebook page, because I like some of it and I don't like some of it. I think there's a writer, redstate.com, the other Red State, that pointed this out, and I want to talk about that. We have to admit something, and it's going to be something that we don't like. And this is what makes this all so ironic. As bad a guy as Donald Trump is, as flawed as he is, as much as he is a con man, a carnival barker, the kind of guy that in the late 1800s would have been selling people snake oil and been in one of those traveling road shows things in wagons talking about the bearded lady and all of that. The truth is he won every one of his votes fair and square. Like it or not. So as many bad things as I can say about him, the truth is that I believe that every one of those votes that he got from going way back to Iowa to now was not fraudulent. There was no ballot stuffing. He didn't have any hacker in there, getting in there and altering the voting tallies or anything like that. He won fair and square. And I congratulate him on that. And of course, he had a lot of help, the media, all the media coverage that he's gotten. But the truth is, people liked what they saw. And that is the part where I want to go from into Ben Sasse's Facebook page, because I know a lot of people are liking what he said, and it's various points. And I'm not gonna read the whole thing. You can go find it and read it for yourself. But that is the point that Ben Sasse doesn't, just kind of glosses over in all of this. The truth is, we could talk all about the media and all the coverage that Donald Trump got and everything else. The point is this. Millions of people saw what Donald Trump is selling, heard what he's selling, and liked it. Okay? They had all these other choices. Now, granted, as we moved on, the choices got less and less. The alternative choices got less and less. But going back to Iowa, to New Hampshire, to South Carolina, and whatever states were after that, the voters in those states heard what he had to say, read what he said, saw him on interviews, saw him on speeches, knew his history, knew all of the bankruptcies and everything, and weren't bothered by it a bit. That's the big problem we have in the United States. It's not necessarily that Donald Trump is a con man. It's that people like it. They like, and now maybe they may say, well, he's not a con man. They like his presentation. They like it. There's a huge group of people in the United States who look at him and don't like him. It doesn't even have anything to do with his politics. And I've made that point. For me, the reason I don't like Donald Trump, it starts with him, his character, and goes from there. A lot of people see his character and like it. That's a problem. Then that is a culture thing. That's not a government thing. That's not a Republican Party thing. That's not political thing. It's not jockeying for position and power thing. That is a cultural thing. When people can look at a guy like that and get motivated to vote for him when all of these other choices are out there. And what it tells you is that character doesn't matter. Because remember, a lot of these people are not saying, as far as Trump supporters go, They are not saying that he is a flawed guy like the rest of them. They just think he's flawed than everybody else. No. They think of him, and when I brought this up yesterday, they see him as a savior. Mm-hmm. They see how he acts and what he's done, and they see that as being good. Now, see, the problem that I have with Ben Sasse is good a guy as I think Ben Sasse is. I think he's a nice conservative. I think he's a good guy. He's obviously very accomplished. He's done very well for himself. The problem that he doesn't talk about in what he mentions, he talks about small-town America and other issues that, these people, deserve a voice. And Donald Trump, among others, does not reflect these small-town values. Well, Senator Sasse, the problem is that a lot of people in those small towns you're talking about, now granted, Nebraska hasn't had its primary yet, but small towns in all these other primary states, a lot of those people you're talking about voted for Donald Trump. Now, what do you have to say about that? What's your answer to that? And see, this is what I mean. We as conservatives, we tell ourselves stories that aren't true. We get up in our own heads and we try to rationalize why this happens, why that happens. And sometimes we can miss the facts as easily as liberals can. You could see this in other aspects of your life. Maybe I could bring up the dating example. Guy asks a girl out. She doesn't want to go out with him. She won't say why. And if you're a woman, if you don't know this, I'm just going to tell you this. We as guys, when we get rejected, most men, they'll start thinking about, well, why did she do that? Was it this? Was it that? And we start telling ourselves stories. Whereas the simple fact may be, maybe she, and if you don't know her well enough, maybe she's a lesbian. Maybe she just got out of a very violent relationship. She's not entitled to tell you that. Maybe she has some other issues that she knows that she doesn't want to show you. You think that she's so good. Maybe inside she thinks she's very bad, and she's trying to save herself from you. Maybe she's doing you a favor and you don't know it. But in our heads, and women do this too, maybe with dating as well, you start telling yourself, it must be us. Well, she's a bitch, and she's this, and then we start thinking, well, maybe it's because I don't make enough money. Well, maybe it's because I'm not good looking enough. Maybe I don't drive the right kind. Right. And we start telling us all these reasons, and many times it has nothing to do with men. All right? It's not anything personal. But we start making up facts in our head. When really we have very, 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 very little information about that. Likewise with this, we're telling ourselves stories about small-town America, the average American, because I have that article here too. It was at the Federalist, and I'm using notes today, by the way, just a few. But there's also an article to kind of go along with what Ben Sasse said in his post at his Facebook page. At the Federalist, and I didn't mention who wrote this article, but the person tries to make the point that any random American would end up being a better president than Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Well, I got news for you. The average American, if you take percentages, voted probably for either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. How's that make you feel? All you conservatives out there who dislike Donald Trump, how's that make you feel? Now, of course, when I think of this, if you're really schooled in politics and kind of funny stories and funny anecdotes, going way back to the 70s, maybe even earlier than that, William F. Buckley Jr., who started National Review, he made the point, I would rather be governed by the first 100 names in the New York City phone book than the people in Congress. You ever wonder where that came from? It was something similar to that. If you've heard of it, that's where it came from. That might have been true then. Maybe. It is certainly not true now to just say that the average American would be a better president than either of these two. You know why? Once again, because if you do the statistics on this, there's a high likelihood that whatever you think the average American is, I'm not even sure how to define. Is the average American a man or a woman? First of all. Do they live in the suburbs, in the big cities, out on a farm? Each of us is going to have a different idea of what the average American is like. The truth is, if the average American is a public school teacher, that public school teacher votes Democrat. So I don't know if I'd want to give that person the executive mansion. How about the White House? How about that? Just saying. But once again, in both of these instances, in Ben Sass's instance and in this article at The Federalist, we're telling ourselves stories. And I've had some time to think about this. Why is that? And I think the reason that this is that you can't pick out small town America and being safe and saying, yeah, they'll make the right choice. Or picking out the average American and saying, yeah, that person would be a great conservative president. And I have this written down in my notes. And I even have, this is just a theory I'm working on for now, but I'm going to tell it to you because that's what I do. It's my show. I can talk about what I want. The truth is this. If you are not schooled in conservatism, it doesn't quite stick. All right, you can talk a good game, and maybe many of your values will be conservative, but when things get tough and you don't have that the theory behind all of this to fall back on, cracks start to show. See, for me, and I'll give you my own example. Yes, I went to a public high school. I went to Leechburg High School in Leechburg, Pennsylvania. Graduated in a class of 71 students, very small school. It's even smaller now. But then I went to a conservative school, and there's a lot of things, bad things that I could say about where I went to college. In retrospect, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you I wish I would have rather have gone to the University of Pittsburgh, some big school like that, because of the way I think about myself. But I went to Grove City College. But at Grove City College, I got a very conservative education in economics and in business and in law. And that stuff has formed the basis for my mind and everything that I fall back on and when I think about the world since then. All right? The problem is that most people don't have that, and most conservatives, people who call themselves conservative, quote unquote, don't have that either. Most people come to conservatism just because they look at their paychecks and see how many taxes are taken out. Or they want to start a business and see all the paperwork that you have to do and all of those things. All right? And that's fine. That's fine. But if you don't understand how something actually comes to market and why things are supposed to be this way, and you can make that kind of logical progression from this to this, but all you're seeing is the end point, that paperwork, those taxes, things like that. It's not quite the same. It's the difference between, I'll give you an example. It's the difference between the guy who works, or a woman who works on your car when something goes wrong, and the person who designed the engine or the metallurgy and everything years ago, 100 years ago, when the internal combustion engine started. The truth is, those people who work on your car probably do not have the education, the experience to create an engine from scratch. The metallurgy, the engineering, the design, the computer programming, everything else that would go along with it. But they can fix it, and that's great. And that's awesome for them. We need those people. But if you don't have those people who build the engines in the first place and know how it all works and why iron and steel, how they work together, and the alloys and aluminum and everything else, then there are no engines. There are no engines. And I think we just have too many people who have come to conservatism on that end of just fixing stuff instead of knowing how it's built in the first place, how you get something started, right? Once again, it's a theory that I'm working on. Because there has to be a reason, because what I'm searching for, what is the reason that some people in the last 8 months have been true to their conservatism in rejecting Donald Trump, but others have gone off the reservation and gone along with Donald Trump and completely ignoring, despite calling themselves conservatives. And I'm not even talking about the conservative media. I'm talking about your average person who is pro-life, pro-gun, pro-low regulations, pro-low taxes, everything else, and you have a candidate that's exactly the opposite. It just the conservatism just isn't sticking in people's minds. It sticks for a while, but it can be pried away. I look at myself, and I have friends that I went to college with who are conservative like mine, and it's kind of funny that those people, men and women, have outright rejected Donald Trump. However, I have conservative friends who I know who didn't go there. They went to other schools, public schools, other things, who are conservative. They say they're conservative like me, but Donald Trump is attractive to them. There's a reason. There's a reason. And I think that this goes to something that I know is difficult to talk about. But we as conservatives, those conservatives who, it just, under stress, their conservatism starts to crack, is they just like big government too much. But when you are educated on it and you're required to get good grades on it, for example, in your early 20s, you know what? That stuff sticks a lot longer because you learn it under pressure. Instead of just reading about it in National Review magazine or just hearing about it on the Rush Limbaugh show. It's just not the same. Even so, even listening to this show, and I'll admit it, that's why when I come to this microphone, I don't see myself as an entertainer or a news gatherer or anything else. I'm trying to be a teacher. That's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be a professor here because I think that's the only way this stuff sticks. What did Kevin Spacey say in the movie Swimming with Sharks? Loud and dirty, that's the only way it sticks. Well, I can't be dirty on here, and sometimes I'm loud. So Ben Sass and this writer at The Federalist, that's the point that they make. They could say all they want about the average American and small-town values and how these people are conservative, but the truth is they're not that conservative, and they don't see as Donald Trump being contradictory to their values. All right? They don't. They are all in with this guy. That's something that we have to, as conservatives, confront first. And we have to stop telling ourselves lies about how good these people are, because they're not. They're just human. And they make mistakes, and they're making huge ones now. But do we have the courage to say that to the average American and those small-town people, those groups and those communities? But I got to go. EdwardDentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, YouTube. EdwardDentzel.com/book. You can download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me, EdwardDentzel@Reagan.com. Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight from my remote location. Good night. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk.